Good evening, it's Wednesday, 9th of April, and here's what's making news around the world on World News Tonight. Tariff turmoil. Nations rush to respond as Trump's global trade blitz disrupts markets. Strike plan. Trump administration weighs drone attacks on Mexican cartels. Medical wonder. British woman gives birth after sister's groundbreaking organ transplant.
From Colombo, this is World News Tonight with Prashansa Gunawardana.
Good evening once again. In response to President Trump's sweeping tariffs, nations worldwide are adopting diverse strategies, from imposing retaliatory duties to seeking diplomatic negotiations, aiming to mitigate economic impacts and safeguard their trade interests amid escalating global tensions.
As Trump's tariffs threaten countries around the world, most have been drafting response measures. Trump's taxes will start with a baseline of 10% on all goods coming into the U.S., with some countries reaching up to 50% on imports. With the reciprocal tariffs on specific countries to begin on April 9th, countries have been ramping up retaliatory measures. Trump has imposed a 20% tariff on goods from the European Union, which stated that it will be defending its interests with countermeasures.
Further diversifying our trade relations is very critical for us because this broadens the market opportunities and is crucial for our companies. So it's very clear that we are open for negotiations and that in parallel we are preparing a potential list for retaliation and other measures for retaliation if this is necessary.
The 27-country bloc will also be working closely with the UK, and though it has levied 25% tariffs on some U.S. imports, it further made clear that it would prefer a negotiated solution by offering a 0-for-0 tariff deal. Asian countries have also varied in their approach to tariff impositions. U.S. President Donald Trump and Japanese Prime Minister Shigeru Ishiba had a 25-minute phone talk on Monday, with the Japanese leader stating that he will dispatch a team for further trade talks. However, Ishiba did voice his disappointment over the tariffs as he noted that Japan had been the biggest investor in the U.S. for 5 straight years. Meanwhile, Vietnam took a conciliatory approach by suggesting it could lower tariffs on U.S. goods to 0, while Malaysia will be drafting a joint response plan at the ASEAN level. Pakistan will be sending representatives to the U.S. for discussions, and the Philippines has also pledged to lower taxes on American imports. However, some countries have also stated that they do not plan to retaliate. India referred to ongoing trade negotiations as it expressed no retaliation efforts, while Taiwan also disclosed no intention for reciprocal trade tariffs as of now against the 32% on Taiwanese goods. The U.S. National Economic Council director said more than 50 countries have reached out to the White House to negotiate trade talks with Washington.
The US is set to implement a staggering 104% tariff on Chinese imports yesterday, intensifying the trade war and prompting concerns over global economic stability and potential retaliatory measures from Beijing.
Washington announced it would impose an astounding 104% tariff across all Chinese imports starting Wednesday. The White House press secretary said a day earlier that Beijing's decision to retaliate was a mistake.
Countries like China, who have chosen to retaliate and try to double down on their mistreatment of American workers, are making a mistake. President Trump has a spine of steel, and he will not break, and America will not break under his leadership.
China was already set to see tariffs increase by 34% on Wednesday, following 2 rounds of 10% levies. The rate shot up again as Beijing did not back down on its decision to impose 34% retaliatory tariffs on U.S. goods by noon on Tuesday. Levitt also said if China were to reach out to Trump over tariffs, Trump will be incredibly gracious, but will do what is best for American interests. The White House further noted that nearly 70 countries have already reached out to Trump to begin negotiations for tailor-made trade deals.
All options are on the table for each country, but again, these are going to be tailor-made deals.
U.S. Trade Representative Jamieson Greer, during a hearing with the Senate Finance Committee on Tuesday, hinted at possible negotiations if a country offers a better alternative than the tariff plan, but said Washington would not offer exemptions or exceptions in the near term.
Amid escalating trade tensions and US tariffs, South Korea has unveiled a $10 billion emergency support package for its auto industry, aiming to cushion manufacturers from financial strains and sustain competitiveness in the global market.
South Korea is stepping in with emergency aid for its automakers as a global trade war escalates. Seoul said Wednesday that it would provide financial support for the industry and offer tax cuts and subsidies to boost domestic demand. US President Donald Trump has imposed a 25% levy on US imports of cars starting from Thursday.
So we'll effectively be charging a 25% tariff, but if you build your car in the United States, there is no tariff.
The South Korean government says its car makers look particularly vulnerable as a result, as they don't make many cars in the US. Officials said it was hard to put a number on how much damage would be done. Among the new measures, the government will provide over $10 billion in financial support for the industry. Taxes on automobile purchases will be cut from 5% to 3.5% until June, and subsidies for electric vehicles will also be increased. The government said it would also seek to aid automakers in efforts to raise sales in developing nations. Regarding Trump's tariffs, officials said they would seek to negotiate a solution. Last year, South Korea's automobile shipments to the US totaled almost $35 billion, or about half of the country's total auto exports. Hyundai Motor said last week that it would try to keep prices unchanged in the US despite the tariffs. Shares in the firm were down around 0.5% by early afternoon Wednesday, beating the 1.5% decline for South Korea's benchmark Kospi stock index.
Israel's Supreme Court proceedings turned tumultuous as protests erupted during hearings on the contested dismissal of domestic security chief Ronen Bar, highlighting deep divisions and raising questions about governmental authority and judicial oversight.
The disruption began even before the judges had entered the courtroom, with protesters shouting, "You have no authority," and "Shame." Supporters of Benjamin Netanyahu's decision to fire Ronen Bar, like this protester, who accuses Bar, as head of Israel's internal security service, of being responsible for the death of his son, a soldier killed in Gaza. The judges eventually ordered the court cleared and resumed an hour later without an audience. They're considering petitions by opposition and non-profit groups that challenged the legality of the government's move. Netanyahu said last month that he'd lost confidence in Bar over Shin Bet's failure to prevent the October 7th attack. But critics say the real reason for Bar's dismissal was that Netanyahu demanded loyalty from the head of an organisation that is meant to be apolitical, an organisation that was also investigating possible ties between Netanyahu aides and Qatar. The latest showdown between Netanyahu and the judiciary has deepened a rift in Israeli society over the power of the courts. The government's proposal to reform the judiciary has regularly drawn hundreds of thousands of Israelis onto the streets in protest.
Let's take a short commercial break. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. President Trump has signed executive orders aimed at revitalizing the US coal industry by easing regulations and promoting coal mining, a move that has sparked debate over environmental concerns and the future of energy production.
It's an industrial revolution era power source, and Donald Trump wants it to power the AI revolution. He believes coal is what's needed to feed the energy-hungry data centres used by AI platforms, a demand that's predicted to skyrocket in the near future. Over the past 25 years, coal-fired plants' share of electricity generation in the US dropped from 50% to 16%. In parallel, coal production has been in steady decline. Trump is determined to reverse those trends, but at what cost? Most of the coal produced in the US comes from strip mines and mountaintop removal, which cause huge damage to the immediate environment. And the extraction is just the first part. Trump calls it beautiful, clean coal, but that's a huge misnomer. When burned, coal produces more greenhouse gases than any other fossil fuel and releases dangerous particulate pollution into the air. Public health researchers found that pollution from coal-fired plants killed almost 500,000 people in the US in the first 2 decades of this century. The US Bureau of Labor Statistics reports that around 40,000 people currently work in the coal industry, down from 70,000 10 years ago. Much of that decline happened during the first Trump administration, though he had promised to revive coal jobs then. While the Biden administration funded programs to retrain coal industry workers for the renewable energy sector, Trump has tried to roll back supports for clean energy. But the renewables industry is growing despite those efforts as companies look at the bottom line. Renewable power plants are fast to build and provide much cheaper energy than fossil fuels.
The Trump administration is considering the use of drone strikes against drug cartels in Mexico to combat cross-border trafficking, a proposal that raises legal and diplomatic questions regarding sovereignty and the scope of U.S. military operations.
Armed drones are among the most precise and lethal weapon systems in the American arsenal. And tonight, 6 U.S. officials briefed on the matter tell him the Trump administration is considering using drone strikes against the Mexican drug cartels that are importing deadly fentanyl into the United States. The officials told us no final decisions have been made, and they said the administration is hoping for Mexico's cooperation. But they say it has not ruled out unilateral action. Acting Drug Enforcement Administrator Mulls told me in a text exchange this week that all options should be on the table because drug cartels have killed more Americans than Al-Qaeda and ISIS. The Mexican president responding to our reporting today. We've always said we do not agree. First, because we're not in agreement with any military intervention, she says, adding, it would not solve anything. President Trump paved the way for military action when his government designated Mexican drug cartels as terrorist organizations and authorized surveillance flights by the CIA over Mexico. With tens of thousands of Americans dying each year from fentanyl coming in mostly from Mexico, the idea of American military action against drug cartels has long been contemplated. Even fictionalized in the 2015 film Sicario.
What are the rules of engagement? Weapons free, my friend.
Drone strikes could target cartel leaders, their security forces, and their manufacturing facilities. Similar to how the U.S. used Reaper drones in the Middle East and South Asia, this Taliban drug facility in Afghanistan destroyed in a split second by 4 500-pound guided bombs. But many experts say U.S. military action without Mexico's consent would spark outrage in Mexico and cripple cooperation. They also question whether it would work to stop the flow of drugs. U.S. drug warriors say it's time to raise the cost to the drug cartels.
The Kremlin has expressed support for upcoming US-Iran nuclear discussions and ratified a 20-year strategic partnership treaty with Tehran, signaling Moscow's intent to bolster diplomatic and military ties with Iran amidst shifting geopolitical dynamics.
The United States and Iran will sit down for nuclear talks in Oman on Saturday. Tuesday's announcement comes a day after U.S. President Donald Trump warned that Iran could be in great danger if the nuclear negotiations do not go well.
He has said there will be direct talks with Iran on Saturday. You can strike a deal with the president, you can negotiate, or there will be hell to pay. And as the president said yesterday, if they don't choose to move forward with diplomacy and a deal, which is the direction we do see them headed in, there will be grave consequences to pay.
Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi said a nuclear deal is possible as long as the U.S. is willing, while he dismissed the Libyan model, which would mean the full dismantling of Iran's nuclear program mentioned by Israel. Russia welcomed the news of the upcoming talks and expressed its willingness to provide assistance. According to Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov on Tuesday, Moscow supports resolving the Iranian nuclear issue through political and diplomatic means. The remarks by the Kremlin also comes as Russia's lower house, the State Duma, on Tuesday ratified a 20-year strategic partnership treaty with Iran, elevating their bilateral relations. The treaty, which was signed by the leaders of Russia and Iran in January, strengthens political, military, and economic cooperation between the two countries. One of the key provisions commits Moscow and Tehran to counter shared security threats, exchange intelligence, and refrain from helping an aggressor if either country is attacked. However, unlike the treaty Russia signed with North Korea in October 2024, Iran did not include a clause allowing the deployment of troops to support military operations. Meanwhile, Russia also announced a separate expert-level talks with China and Iran on nuclear issues that took place in Moscow on Tuesday.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced that Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting alongside Russian troops in Donetsk region, a development that could complicate international relations and China's stance on the conflict.
Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced on Tuesday local time that Ukrainian forces have captured 2 Chinese nationals fighting alongside the Russian army in the eastern part of the country. Zelensky stated that intelligence suggests more Chinese individuals are present in Russian military units. He directed Ukraine's foreign minister to engage with Beijing to seek clarification on this matter, but has not heard from the Chinese government yet. The development raises questions about China's role in the conflict, given its previously declared stance for peace.
Amnesty International reports a significant surge in executions worldwide, reaching the highest number in 9 years, with countries like Iran, Iraq and Saudi Arabia accounting for a substantial portion of the recorded cases.
More people were put to death in 2024 than in any other year over the past decade. 1,518 executions have been registered by Amnesty International, a 32% increase over the previous year. According to its annual report on the use of the death penalty, Iran, Iraq and Saudi Arabia, which account for the overwhelming majority of executions worldwide, were responsible for the increase, using it as a tool to silence political opposition.
In 2024, Iran persisted in their use of the death penalty to punish individuals who had challenged the Islamic Republic establishment during the Women Life Freedom Uprising.
Amnesty's figures only include known executions. The organisation believes the real number is far higher. It doesn't include the thousands believed to be put to death in North Korea, Vietnam or China, the world's leading executioner. There may be more executions, but fewer countries now take part in the practice. Only 15 countries are known to have executed people in 2024, the lowest number on record for the second year running.
While secrecy continued to shroud scrutiny in some countries that we believe are responsible for thousands of executions, it's evident that states that retain the death penalty are an isolated minority.
The US executed 25 people in 2024, an increase from the previous year. President Donald Trump says he aims to vigorously pursue the death penalty as a tool to protect Americans.
Let's take a short commercial break now. More world news on the other side. Welcome back. In a groundbreaking medical achievement, a British woman has given birth after receiving a womb transplant from her sister, marking the UK's first successful birth following such a procedure and offering new hope for women facing similar fertility challenges.
It may be a Friday morning at this English pub, but the place is alive with song. It's a vibrant community, many of whose members are living with dementia. Week, the watering hole, typically named the Gerard Arms, becomes the Loving Arms, a place for people with dementia and their caregivers and loved ones.
It's great, and because all of us have got the same, or half of it, or some of it, so they all understand each other.
My husband has just gone into a care home three weeks ago. We've been coming here for a couple of years now, and it's just absolutely amazing.
Tony Snell recently lost his mother to vascular dementia.
What a journey of highs, lows, sadness, frustration. We kind of did it together and we got through it together.
As a caregiver, he sees the value in a joyous community like the Loving Arms.
A session like this really would have been a massive benefit to my mum.
As these pub goers can attest, whether or not they know your name, they're always glad you came.
An innovative pub setting has been established to provide a safe and welcoming environment for individuals with dementia, fostering social interaction and community support reminiscent of the familiar and friendly atmosphere depicted in the classic TV show Cheers.
This British woman is the first in the UK to give birth after a womb transplant. Grace Davidson was born with a rare condition that causes the womb to be missing or underdeveloped. But an operation in February 2023 has changed her life.
Oh, she's a little miracle. We'd never really let ourselves imagine what it'd be like for her to be here until we sort of saw her come up over the drapes, so it was really wonderful.
The 36-year-old received the womb from her sister, Amy Purdy, who already had 2 babies, and she named the baby after her.
It was incredibly difficult to let her do that for me as well. But I mean, it's incredible. It's a huge act of sisterly love. I didn't feel like I was living a very full life. I felt pretty broken. So my quality of life wasn't great. There was a sadness that was over me, and the sadness is gone. And I think it's just the joy that I feel now that she's here.
Here is Angus, the baby's father.
It was an absolute no-brainer. We'll look at our daughter every day of her life and remember her auntie who played that crucial role in bringing her into the world, and we wouldn't have a family without Amy.
The surgery took a team of over 30 medics and around 17 hours to complete.
A young mountain lion cub injured after being struck by a vehicle is undergoing rehabilitation at a wildlife center, highlighting efforts to rescue and restore the health of wildlife affected by human activities.
A mountain lion cub is on the mend after being hit by a car earlier this year. The injured big cat was found by the side of a road in Southern California's Orange County. It was brought to a wildlife center run by the San Diego Humane Society. Once there, veterinarians put it under anesthesia and were able to give it an exam. They found that the cub had a fractured skull as well as head and eye trauma and lameness in one of its legs. That called for some intensive care. For nearly 3 months, animal rescuers treated the cub's pain, put it on a special diet, and closely monitored its development. After a period, they determined it was healthy enough to move to an outdoor enclosure. Rescuers say the cat is on the right path towards being able to return to the wild. It's exhibiting natural survival behaviors like hunting and avoiding humans. Now they're looking for the cub to continue to put on weight and hit some other benchmarks before it can be released back into its natural habitat.
Well, that's the wrap from all of us here at World News Tonight. Stay tuned as Anuradhi Wickramasinghe will shortly be joining you with the nightly business report. I'm Prashansa Gunawardana, and we are leaving you with visuals of Brazil showcasing style at Sao Paulo Fashion Week. Thank you for watching us and have a great night.